All right, everybody, we are on air. If you haven't joined us before, this is Agentic SaaS Talks. So this is just a series where we go through, we talk to founders, we talk to developers, we talk to builders, people who are building Agentic SaaS. And this is an evolving space. We love to come in, have people come in, talk about what they're building, talk about what they're doing. And today we actually have a really interesting episode for you. And we're going to talk about the future of cloud-native data services with AI and agents. And there's a heavy emphasis in the topic, I think, on data. And you've probably heard us talk about this before. When we talk about AI, we always talk about how data is one of the drivers for AI, and it's going to really evolve what we're going to do. And we're lucky enough today to be joined by Sergey Pronin, one of the founders of Solanica. And Sergey, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got here, what you've been doing, and then we'll jump right into the topic and start talking about it.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Bill. Thank you, guys. So for the whole my career, I've been working on various platforms and building platforms, whether it was SaaS as a service or platform as a service or database as a service or Kubernetes as a service. Something as a service always. And last 6 years, I think, I was working in the company called Percona. It's quite well known in open source space, building open source databases. And then at some point, I was heading our product team. And we decided that, hey, we have this nice product, Open Everest, which is an open source solution to deploy databases and run them on Kubernetes. And we thought, okay, it might be a good idea to actually create a separate company for it. And that's how Solanica actually appeared. And Percona Everest is now Open Everest, and we are focusing on making it truly vendor neutral. And Solanica is the company behind it and driving it. So
Nice.
That's who am I.
Nice. That's great. By the way, I'm also joined today by Ermin and Michael Cooper. All right, Ermin from AWS, Michael Cooper from Omnistrate. So we have a great crew here today. Now, Sergey, before we start talking about agents and data and all of these things, I have a much more important topic. I see Legos in the background, and I'm pretty sure I saw a post on LinkedIn recently about you and Legos. Tell us about your Lego hobby really quick, and like how you got into it. This is multi-generational for you, I think. Tell us just a little bit about what you're building right now with Legos.
Yeah, well, my story with Lego, it started, I think, 30 years ago when I was a kid. And I was craving to get some small Lego sets to build something. They were very rare and hard to get at the time and quite expensive as well. And well, still I got some, and I was building different things. And the bigger I grew, the more complex Lego sets I was trying to get. Like there were first Lego Technics, it was the time when they just appeared. And it was wonderful. And now I'm over 30 and I have 3 kids, and gladly 2 of them are boys who are interested in Lego, or I'm trying to make them interested, right? And they sometimes ask, oh, I want a Lego for my birthday, I want a Lego for New Year, can you get me some? Yeah, and now I have this Lego obsession a bit evolved. Now Lego is also producing this Lego sets for adults, like Concord or Typing Machine, very interesting ones, and I'm getting them. And the last one was Titanic. It's, I think, the 3rd biggest Lego set in Lego collection overall. And yeah, it took us almost 3 months to finalize. Well, mostly because of my tight schedule and kids' tight schedule. We wanted to do it together, kind of bonding thing. But yeah, it's wonderful. I really like it, and I also like how Lego is evolving. They always introduce something fascinating.
Well, I think before that last this recent run up in the price of gold, at one point Lego measured per weight was worth more than gold was.
Yeah, I heard that as well. But you need to buy a Lego set, and you can't unpack it, otherwise it's going to depreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, but speaking about Lego, right? So side story, basically, Bill, when I saw that you wanted actually to talk about Lego's post from Sergey, well, I thought it's probably something around the databases and how to put containers together and how that actually assembles Lego. So I spent some minutes searching for that post, and of course, didn't manage.
Yeah. No, I mean, but the segue is great. I mean, anyone who's a Lego builder has that mindset of how things fit together and how to, how to enhance things. And it's not just a simple picture, it's bigger than the block, right? The blocks are the building blocks of what we build. We can replace blocks. Everything can be interchangeable. It's a great analogy for cloud development, actually, and especially for this agentic world that we're heading into. And with that, I mean, let's jump into this topic because, Sergey, I think you've got some really interesting perspectives in terms of what you've been building. I'm going to start off kind of evolving around data and AI. And let me start off with a question. I'll send it to you first, Michael, and Ermin will chime in as we go. But how will data evolve the AI growth strategies? And are there some current gaps there that you're aware of in terms of where data is and where it needs to be to really help AI accelerate?
Yeah, well, I can start. So I believe that in general, we have to stop thinking about data as a library and start thinking about it as a fuel injector. And the first wave of AI was fed on the public commons, like scraping the internet. So there are lots of books, there are lots of websites. And today we see that's already exhausted. And growth now is moving into high stakes or high fidelity data. We're seeing this shift towards proprietary data graphs. And in 2026, I do believe that the growth is not going to come from more data, but it's going to be coming from more dark matter data of the enterprises. Because the biggest gap right now is that 80% of the world's most valuable information is trapped in this enterprises, in PDFs, in Slack messages, in something that is very internal to companies that is not public domain, right? And even Zoom transcripts, for example, like, and so on.
Yeah.
So this is like a tribal knowledge inside people's heads. So it's not something that available overall. And most companies are drowning in data, but starving for truth. I like this expression. I heard it somewhere. Like, hey, we have a lot of data, but we don't know where the truth is. And that's quite interesting. What's going to happen with it? And another interesting thing that I think I heard somewhere recently. I don't know if you know about this Lenny Rachinsky podcast. And recently he had some guys who are doing evals, LLM evals. Okay. So these are companies that are skyrocketing in revenue. What they actually do is they hire experts in various data domains. And these experts help them train, and other companies, Open AI, Claude, everything, Anthropic, to train LLMs to become experts in these public domains. That's another good example where the data gap is. You don't have this data available like from a test pilot who knows how to fly a plane, all the ins and outs of the plane and so on. So you need this person, or somebody from a chemical lab. So yeah, it's this gap of the data. Any other thoughts? Or?
Well, one thing I've been kind of thinking a lot about lately is I do think you're right. I do think that data is insanely valuable. I do think there's a rush to try and get to that data and then to tokenize the data or to graph the data or the rest. And I do think that is what everyone's going to be talking about for the next 6 months. But I do think that causes an interesting risk. And that risk is, what are our AI models going to be training on 6 months from now or next year? And so if we're going in and applying machine learning and doing all these things to create these amazing KPIs, what we're doing is we're changing that data, and we're adding the bias of our current models and the bias of our current thinking into that data. And so I think the really smart enterprise companies right now are doing two things. They are, one, allowing these AI agents to train against their data and to find insights in the rest. And two, if they're in any way, shape, or form intelligent, they are religiously protecting, putting a moat around that data, because raw, unfiltered, unchanged data is insanely valuable to these agents as they get better and better. And I do fear there's a lot of organizations that are not. And so as AI just becomes this thing that people are bolting on, it's changing organizations' data. And there's a lot of research out there where you start to get model collapse because you're just reinforcing the learnings of your reinforced learnings, and everything that made that data special is lost.
Mm-hmm. That's good, Art.
It's funny that shift, right? So at the beginning of the year, last year, right? So we were talking about AI agents and so MCPs and integrations and all those things. But suddenly we all see the importance of data, right? Clean data.
Yeah.
And funny how data platforms as company are actually now, I wouldn't say winning the game, but at the beginning, so 2024, 2025, I was thinking, okay, it's all about computer, it's all about, agents and agents delivering, but without the right data, what you, Sergey, said, so kind of, starving for the right, so for the true information, right? So this is actually where the company, so it goes in that direction, Michael, what you said. The really smart company will actually make sure that they have clean data and I wouldn't say a single source of truth, but that they know actually where the data is where the information is coming from.
Well, and to use that as kind of a pitch back to what Sergey's building, and I do want to actually hear more about what you're building, so let me kind of spin this up here. And so
yeah.
I think a year ago, we all knew two things. Snowflake and Databricks had won the data fight. There's no reason for the rest of us to pay any attention. And OpenAI had won AI. And so we were all sure that was the future 6 months or 12 months ago. And that's simply not true. And so I do think some of the things that we're seeing in terms of data is insanely valuable. Data matters. Having your LLM next to your data matters. So I do think there's going to be a resurgence in companies spending more time, effort, and care in managing their own databases. And so I think I see a resurgence in Postgres coming. I see possibly even a resurgence in mainframes. And so I do think there is a case to be made where people are going to be they know data is the most important thing, and they're going to be putting big moats around that data. And that does not mean they're going to immediately give their data to others. And it's interesting. And so what you're building, I think is timely and is interesting. And again, 12 months ago, we would have said this is silly because Snowflake won the world. But I do think now there's this, there's a need for people running their own databases, being in charge of their own databases, and putting their data where they want their data and in their control. So can you talk a little bit more about what you guys are building and why you're building it?
Yeah, so we're building on the shoulders of this project Percona Everest, which allows you to deploy and manage databases in Kubernetes locally or anywhere you want, right? And when we were studying Solanica, we actually thought, okay, shall we go SaaS? Because we have a nice open source project, and shall we start building a SaaS application for it? And so on. And we worked with Omnistrate in the past to build something in SaaS, which was wonderful. But then we thought, okay, if we really want to stay true to open source and be in line with where world is going into sovereign data and sovereign AI, then we should stick to some niche. We should stick to the way to run databases in your own data centers locally, and that's what we're building. We're building a platform that would allow you to do it quite freely, and you don't need to lock in yourself into solutions from various clouds. If you want, you can still run in the cloud. No matter what, it's still going to work in your EKS or whatever. So, that's what we're building.
Interesting.
So I see Bill is saying that he is rejoining, right?
Yeah, okay. But don't worry. Let's simply continue. So
Okay.
What I would like actually to know, the way I understood what you're doing is actually your databases are either relational or NoSQL database like MongoDB, and they're running on containers, which makes them easily, what you said, no lock-in. It makes them easily portable. Is that actually how the whole how the Solanica works?
Correct. Yeah. So the project is called Open Everest. Solanica is the company that is driving its open source adoption and also creating some commercial structure around it. We have not figured it out 100% yet, but it's in the works. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's databases running in containers. And the beauty with Open Everest isn't that now it's going into this modular core where you can add other databases, not just the ones that we already have, but you can add plugins for your vector storage or for your ClickHouse, analytical database, whatever you want. Or you can add Redis, Kafka for streaming, whatever. And yeah, we want to give this freedom and simplicity to the users so that you can enjoy this simplicity of running and managing your data whenever you want without feeling locked in, cost-wise or vendor-wise, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting for the SaaS companies to use Solanica service if they want to be there where their customers are. At AWS, we call that SaaS anywhere. So it actually bring your own cloud method so that you can actually go and deploy your application, your SaaS application plane or part of your application plane or there where your customer is. And for that, obviously, right, so it would be helpful if your database is packaged in a container so that you can just ship it like that, even if it's on premise, right? And this is actually, okay.
Yeah.
I think, Sergey, one question that immediately comes to mind, obviously, you're talking about databases as cattle, basically, right? Which is how we've always talked about containers. But persistence, when we think about persistence, we think about long-term and stability and everything else. And so traditionally, like you wouldn't, if you put Postgres into your Kubernetes instance, you'd lose your data. So how are you guys managing that? What is the secret magic there, if you can share it, about what Everest does that enables us to keep our data while still being able to spin up instances as we need them?
Yeah. So I would say we're kind of hostages of the situation here, not like the guys who are moving forward the industry. And why I'm saying that is we're running on Kubernetes, and Kubernetes by nature is kind of ephemeral environment where your pods or containers can come and go easily, and you don't want to monitor it and make it like a server running for years. It can go down any day, anytime. You can run on spot machines, whatever. So that actually, the idea of databases as cattle means that databases are sort of ephemeral and they can be easily replaced, and they can be managed as homogeneous fleet rather than unique, hard configured paths, right? Like a monolith. And I really like there are products and projects around it, like modern realization of this philosophy. You can see it in a product like Neon. I don't know if you heard about it. It's the Postgres provider, and what they did is they actually decoupled storage and compute. And the reason, not the reason, but the result of it is that they're extremely fast now. So you can provision a new database in Neon in seconds. But also what's more important is that you can roll back your transactions also back in time in seconds. And that's why lots of today's modern AI tools like Replit or Lovable, they choose Neon for their backend database. Or Supabase is another good example.
Yeah. Another good one,
So this technology, they also treat databases as cattle because they understand that in this modern world, speed and flexibility and this ephemeral nature of data is the key.
Yeah.
This sounds...
Go ahead, Everest.
For me, just this sounds like almost like a heresy, right? Because I was I started my career as a database developer, database administrator. So I used to be kind of Oracle and SQL Server professional, and it's that your database is there, right? So that's your favorite.
Sacred.
You make. Exactly. You don't. Not everyone can touch it. So it's actually, you build all that. And now when I hear and see what's happening, right? So for me, it's really kind of hard to comprehend that the database, you can actually just treat database is just another service that can go down, and then you will still continue, running your application.
Well, and to make you feel even weirder, Erwin, one of the things I did over the weekend, and I apologize to anyone listening to this, I got so tired of Claude just saying, hey, here are the SQL edits you should be making to your Supabase. I just gave Claude my API key, and Claude now just makes the edits to my Supabase directly. And so we have all gone from, not in my database, to sure, why not? It is a funny time that we are living in. And so I do think, those of us who are kind of on the front edge, kind of developing in this and playing in this, we're looking at it and saying, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But the core enterprise guys are looking at that and going, yeah, no, just no.
Not in my house.
Right.
Not under my watch.
Sergey, one of the interesting things, I worked with Neon a couple years ago. Like it's an interesting solution, and one of the selling points. So most people probably have read by now. Databricks bought them for I think $1 billion. And when I was watching the founder of Databricks talk about why they acquired them, one of the value propositions that they really liked about Neon was the ability for agents to actually spin up instances of Neon DB, use them, consume them, and then spin them back down, all without human interaction. And do you think that's sort of the trend where data is going to, where agents control the data? Kind of like Michael was talking about, he just gave control over and let Claude work on his database. Is that where we're heading, where data and agents kind of become paired together and the agents manage the data on their own? Or is that just sort of maybe just one flavor of this thing that we're talking about?
I think there is no easy answer to that one. The way I see that agents are using Neon is more in this realm of developers and creating applications, where you go to this, I don't know, agent. What are the most important, famous ones? Cursor, right? You go to Cursor and you say, hey, I need some application to, I don't know, manage my to-do lists or whatever, and it needs a database to store your to-dos. Right. And what it does, it actually says, okay, I'm going to create a database. Where do you want me to create? Give me an API key. And you can give it access to your Amazon account, like Michael Cooper most probably is going to do. Or you can give it access to Neon, whatever it is, right? Neon is beautiful because it really takes just seconds for database provisioning. And that's the beauty of it, because agent cannot wait indefinitely, or it will wait most likely, but you are not gonna.
Right.
You want things fast. You want them on the screen. You want this wow effect from an agent, and that's why lots of these companies are choosing Neon to provide it. But also, it's quite important for sure for agents is to have some sort of API, right? And that's another problem that we believe lots of companies are facing when they're running on-prem. Like, they don't have most probably their platforms as a service or exposed APIs to deploy databases quickly. They need to open a ticket to some database administrator to create a database, give them access, do security clearance, whatever. There are multiple steps. And now you need to automate it. And well, that's where Open Everest can help. And there are a bunch of other solutions that do this as well on-prem.
Nice.
I do really want to stress, what you're doing, Sergey, versus like the Neons and the rest. And I do think there's going to be a huge play here. So I do think you guys are the right time, right company. Which is, why did Databricks buy them? Or sorry, why were they acquired for $1 billion? Because a bunch of people are putting data there, and they want these big lakes of data. And so they don't really care. You're doing it in Spark, you're doing it in Postgres, they don't care what form the data is stored in. They just want these big, massive chunks of data so that everyone brings their apps and brings their agents to them. And so it's a land rush on their place. And they're gonna make a ton of money. There's nothing wrong with that play. But there's going to be a lot of enterprise companies out there that are saying, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do. No, my data is incredibly important to me. I'm not trusting you with it, or I don't want it that far from my factory floor, or there's lots of reasons that this is going to happen. But data is insanely important. Managing database and all these databases need to get easier, which is what Open Everest is doing. And I think there's going to be a large push for that. So there's going to be a lot of people modernizing their databases, and that does not necessarily mean switching to the Neons of the world or the Snowflakes or the Databricks of the world. They're going to be doing this in-house, and tools that help them do that in an intelligent and open way so that they can see what's going on. They don't have to trust that the LLM is doing it correctly. That I think there's going to be a massive resurgence for that in 2026, and I think you guys are onto something.
Thank you. Hope so.
So going along those same lines, Sergey, are you finding yourself aligning with specific agentic platforms? So like as companies shift into on-prem, if they're moving, as Ehrman said, maybe not just pure SaaS, but also to sort of bring your own cloud, and they'd like to keep things in their own accounts. What are they building with in addition to what you guys have? Like, where are you seeing your database line up with external platforms, with self-developed services? Where do you see the most sort of traction in terms of what your customers are building on top of your database?
Yeah, well, I think there are maybe 4, maybe more use cases. So the top one obviously is building internal development platforms, IDPs. And it can mean a lot of things. It can be something like a Backstage. Have you heard about Backstage, right? This tool. Yeah, so internal development platform with all the dashboards. You need data. So where do you host it? Well, here we are, right? Another use case is sort of any sort of internal DBaaS or platform as a service. It's more like an enterprise story. It's when the company has 80,000 or something engineers, and they need databases daily, and they need various different technologies. The beauty of what we're building is that we have multiple database engines. We don't do that just Postgres. We can give you other technologies, and that's cool. And also we see, obviously, a huge overlap with AI, where companies are building their internal AI platforms where they host LLMs locally, and they need vector databases. And also they want to be sure that exactly these LLMs are not leaking data anywhere, and this data stays in their premises, and that it's sort of you can call it just a simple RAG, retrieval augmented generation, but it's more than that. It's just talking to your data in a simple form, in a human language, and getting results and value fast. It's not just building analytics anymore. Like, tell me what my KPI is. Now it's going far beyond these use cases where our customers are looking to understand their data much better. It's like not a data warehouse, it's much more, because now you have more data points that you can connect. It's not just talking to your data, it's talking to your Notion, it's talking to your GCP cloud, it's talking to your Amazon cloud, understanding what's happening everywhere and digesting it and showing it to the user. So yeah, this is another agentic use case that we see.
Interesting. Yeah, Ehrman, I know you work with a lot of startups. Are you seeing some of those same use cases reflected across your customer base, or are you hearing some of those same signals at all?
Especially with startups who are doing development platforms, right? This is actually your first case that you mentioned, Sergey. So you need a formal database. You need something that you can actually quickly spin off, and then store the data there, test it, and remove it. Or I don't know, you use tools like Lovable or the Origin AI, where you want to create something, you need a database. You don't want to think about how the data model will look like. Is that actually a SQL database or not? how to properly model it. You just want to store your data, and then AI does everything for you. So those are two cases that I see. I still have, to be honest, personally, and I know that I sound like a very old person now. I still have problem, thinking of data as something like, that ephemeral that will actually disappear, because you still need to make sure that you keep it somewhere, because your future model will actually need that data. And if I can actually just spin the database, I'm not sure how it will scale up. I'm not sure how it will actually, what is about high availability, what is about resilience there. And this is something that I ask myself every time when I hear something like what you're actually building, Sergey. I think that idea is quite cool. I'm just actually, for me, there are quite a lot, unanswered questions.
Got it. Makes sense.
Cool. Michael, you've been quiet for too long.
I'm just thinking of all the data stories and going back to what Sergey's building. And so, I mean, way back when in my Microsoft days, we actually helped Delta Airlines spend a ridiculous amount of money building a redundancy for their database. And we were all ridiculously smart about what we were building, this, that, and the other. And at one point, the VP who was in charge of this process said, "Hey, this is so good." He walked over and unplugged the production database to prove our failover worked. And the failover worked. However, none of the systems that the database needed failed to the other data center, because it was just a single outage, and all of Delta went down for 2 days. And so it's a story I can tell now, because I think it's past I can't get sued for it now, but the understanding of how incredibly important database is, and all the different connections you have to it, and the scaling of it and the rest, is not something that you can, I don't care how smart your LLM is, you still need experts in the room to understand the dependencies, the failovers, and all the rest of it. And so that's where something like the Open Everest project makes a lot of sense, and that's where what Sergey's building makes again a ton of sense, because I do think there's going to be a large group of companies who are pushing back from I'm just going to turn over all my data to a Snowflake. I do want to keep that data internal, but I do want to do it in a more intelligent way, and perhaps I want to get off the AS400. So and so I think there's a conversation to be had here.
There is one more use case scenario that I'm thinking of as we were talking, and this is, I think in future it will be not human who will need the database, and it will not be humans who will create those ephemeral databases, but rather AI agents. So I started, when you asked me, Bill, I started with, okay, me as a developer when I need a database. So this was actually, but as the more I think, the agents are becoming smarter and smarter. They will actually, every time when we ask them something to do, they will need to build that. They will probably need some kind of a formal database. They could then go and use then Everest to Open Everest, right? To create that container and deploy the database, do the job, and then remove the database. So that's something that I think we'll be seeing that more and more in future, because it's not about humans anymore.
It makes a lot of sense.
I just gave you a business scenario.
Right. I actually think, Sergey, this takes us in an interesting direction, because as of right now, when we think about agents, we think about context, and they have their short-term context. Like our agent core solution that AWS built, they sort of split out memory into short-term memory and long-term memory, where, listen, if you're running an agent and it knows that Airman works for AWS, and it figures out like, oh, his hobbies, he plays guitar and it does these things, well, that short-term memory is gone as soon as we stop talking to Airman. And it's like, okay, maybe there's some things we want to remember. Maybe those are important, and we talk about shifting those into longer-term memory. And then even beyond that, like taking that even to the next level of thought, is now you've got multiple agents. They all need some version of the same context. All of them need to understand that Ermin has these, existing things that we've talked to him about before, that he's interested in, that don't cease the moment we stop talking to him, or even that are just specific to one agent. Our finance agent, doesn't need to know that he just that he was willing to buy guitars. Like maybe the ones that sells him apps also needs to know that he's interested in guitars and put the right apps in front of him. Different applications, different versions of these use cases might need the same context and memory. How do you see that spot evolving? And is that a space you guys are trying to play in as well?
I see it as a history, right? History lesson or the evolution. So right now we're heading into this age of internet of agents, right? It was the same way in the 90s. It was about connecting documents, and that's how the web or the internet appeared. In 2010, we were about connecting people. It was social networks all over the place. And now we're talking about connecting agents, which are in general autonomous units of labor, right?
Yeah.
And interoperability isn't just a technical convenience, right? It's going to be a market necessity overall, because right now we're living in this islands again of intelligence where the data is isolated in chunks. Your Salesforce agent doesn't know anything about your supply chain agent. It doesn't know anything.
Right.
And it's becoming a huge tax on the economy overall. And I believe that, especially last year, there were a lot of promises that agents are there, everything is going to change. Well, agents appeared, but they're still, let's be honest, a bit dumb, right? And I believe in this year, it might change a lot, exactly because agents are going to start to each other. And we will have this shift from clunky API integrations to semantic negotiations, where agents will discover each other, negotiate permissions, collaborate in real time without human even talking to it. I don't know if you guys saw this. It was CloudBot, then it was MaltBot, and now it's OpenClaw, right? This open source tool. It's just insane. And what it actually does, it spins up some agents internally that are talking to each other and trying to figure out, okay, I have access to Google, I have access to whatever it is. Let's talk, let's figure out how we can provide the more value. So it's security nightmare, but it's beautiful.
The beautiful security nightmare. I like it.
Well, it ties to a different thread there too, because I don't know if you guys also saw Ralph came out from the Cloud Coast folks, and so Ralph was just kind of this. It was a play on words where it's basically a really stupid. It just keeps asking the same question again and again, and forces your little agent to keep working on the same project, and so it produces bad results or okay results, then semi-decent results, then fairly okay results, and then good results, and then excellent results, because it just keeps asking the same question and telling it to do it again and again. And so one of the things I think that people are, so everything Sergey says is 100% true, but I do think there's going to be two kinds of agents out there. There's going to be the ones that have to get it right the first time. And so DoorDash, for example, is an agent we all use. And if every fifth time or 12th time it drops off your food at your neighbor's house, it's going to get fired, right? And so there are Uber is an agent we all use, and Uber, that experience needs to be good every time. And so there's going to be two, and I don't know if a lot of us are kind of planning for that, but there's going to be multiple kinds of agents, because there are ones that we want that are incredibly important. Don't screw this up. And there's also ones that say, hey, search the web and see if you find this. And it doesn't need to find it the first time, because you can have it search. You can have 7 other ones and try and search and find it too. And so it's going to be an interesting world. It's going to all be related to data, and it's all going to be related to context. We're going to be burning a ton of compute doing silly things, like, as Sergey says, having our personal assistants talk to each other and form their own social network, because OpenBot has created its own social network, which is ridiculous. I have not a lot of interest in Facebook, but I suddenly really want to join OpenBot's social network, and they won't let me in. I mean, I feel offended.
There is already something like that, right? So there is already a social network. It's called Claude Book, like a Facebook, like Claude Book, where Open Claude, right? Now it's called. They can actually join, and exchange the thoughts, right? Which is actually sounds crazy when I say they exchange thoughts, but they actually cooperate. It's almost like a Reddit for AI agents. And Michael, just a side remark that AI agent that would actually every 10th time drop food from DoorDash to a different to your neighbor would probably be still more reliable than my current delivery guy. So looking forward meeting that your AI agent.
But that was fun. So that is an actual scientific number that I guarantee there are people out there looking at saying, what is the threshold here? And so does it need to be right 98% of the time? It's never going to be zeros. I mean, it's never going to be 100%. So it's 99. So, and the old joke was, 99.999, and each 9 cost an extra 0 to your budget. And so that conversation, that's not going to end. And I think we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Bill, one thing what I would also like to understand from Sergey, I know, Sergey, you're also running Open Everest, right, as a maintainer, and there he goes. Right? So we just lost Sergey. But I would like.
We've been having fun with the internet today. We were talking about how we solved the internet. Maybe we haven't. Maybe we need to take a step back and put some agents on this internet thing.
Yeah.
But let's see if Sergey comes.
It's always the infrastructure that needs to be sorted.
Always infrastructure, exactly.
But what I wanted also to understand is a little bit about the why open source and how community is being managed and all those things. So I think it has a very nice spin, and I'm not sure how Sergey and his team actually running that on top of Solanica. But
I mean, I think we're all all of us have had this sort of tie-in our minds about what open source and AI and how these things are evolving together. And I do think so. So we've got Sergey backstage. I'm pinging Kamal to see if he can let him in. But while we're waiting, I think open source is playing a key role already. There he is. And it's very interesting. So Sergey, we're switching gears a little bit over to open source here. All of us think this is like open source and agents and agentic AI. Open source is going to play a really key role, but Erman was asking specifically about you guys. I'll let you maybe ask your question again, because I don't know if Sergey heard it.
Yeah. As far as I know, Sergey, Open Everest is a open source, right? And on top of that, you're building now Solanica. But why open source? I think initially Percona was not actually open source, and then you decided at one moment in time to make it open source. Why this decision, and how does actually contribute your business plans?
Well, first of all, Percona Everest, which was the project originally called, it was always open source. So Percona is very open source friendly, and almost all software that is shipped in Percona is open source. But the decision was made, we need to move it to another company and keep it open source. But we're actually doing more in this open source realm. We want to donate it to CNCF. And the reason why we do it is exactly because we want to ensure our community that the license is not going to change. Like you might probably saw a lot of license changes.
That's never happened in the database world. What are you talking about?
Exactly, right? So this was happening a lot. And definitely we want to be very honest and transparent with our community and with the users. And donating to CNCF makes sense, because CNCF is actually, what they do is they enforce governance. They make sure that you're not going to change the license, you're not going to kill the product because you donate your IP and your trademarks to them, and so on and so forth, right? And we are building Solanica on top of it as a business. And the way we're building it, we're still figuring out, because we're just starting. But the way we're saying it today is that it's very important that you set some ground rules at the very beginning around your open source product and with the community, so that you are very transparent and clearly communicate to the community that, guys, this piece is going to be always open source. We're not going to change it. And technologies that are related to open source are always going to be open source. Like if we're building something for MySQL or for Postgres, which are open source technologies, this is going to be open source forever, right? We're not going to change it. Yeah. But at the same time, if we're building something that is going to be working for, let's say, Microsoft SQL or Oracle database, that most likely is not going to be open source. And that's fine, right? Because, well, your open source community relies on other open source technologies, and enterprises rely on this very expensive technologies that I mentioned. So it makes perfect sense to keep them closed source. But I mentioned it before with Open Everest, we're building this core, we're building this modular core and architecture that you can plug in things into, right? And this is going to be open. And if for some reason you think, okay, I can build a better plugin for Microsoft SQL Server, so be it. We're not going to stop you. It can happen, right? That's how I think about it.
And how do you build that community? How do you keep people engaged, right? So I know everyone wants to kind of use your project and just be kind of on a consumer side. How do you find people who are ready to contribute?
Yeah, so I usually look at community in, let's say, in two buckets. The first bucket of your community are your contributors, the ones who are willing to contribute code, contribute to documentation, whatever, right? And the way to keep contributors engaged is quite easy. First, you need to make sure that your development environment can be easily created so that it's not like a PhD project to speed up something to contribute code into Open Everest, right? Okay. So that anyone can do it with a single command, preferably, right? And another one is that the contributions themselves should be quite easy to deliver. And the good example that I usually use with folks at our team is that right now, when we got Percona Everest, it's not modular. So let's say you want to add a new database. To do that, you need to be pretty experienced in Kubernetes. You need to understand how all these custom resources work and everything. You need to be experienced in Golang. You need to be proficient in React because you want to build UI. And you need to be proficient in DevOps and in this database technology that you want to introduce. So you need to be quite an expert in all these things to add just this database technology, which doesn't make sense for me as a contributor to go out there and contribute code to this thing, because it's going to be a pull request with hundreds or even thousands of lines of code. It's just insane, right? So good example to ease this contribution is to ensure that you have some plugins that are small chunks of work that you can push, try it out, and then enhance, iterate, and make it better, and better. And that's a good example of how you can make your contributors happy, right? And build the community around your products and build the contributors who want to contribute. That's the first bucket. And the second bucket are not contributors, but community users. And this is the bucket and the group that is so neglected sometimes in different communities. And sometimes it's, let's be honest, it's rightful, because you build a product and then somebody is writing a message to you at 3 a.m. in Slack saying, hey, I have this problem. I'm using your product. You guys suck. And you, okay, let me figure it out for you. And you're working with this contributor. But yeah, to work with community users, you need to be extremely transparent and forthcoming, and you need to always explain what you're working on right now, like public roadmaps or community meetings. You need to always explain why this bug is not a priority right now, and so on. it takes a lot of effort and time to go and answer each pull request or each issue or each forum thread or Slack message. And that's why it's always so neglected. But if you are in open source business, you share these updates frequently, you do this, you go through it as a founder, as a developer, as a maintainer, and it doesn't matter. You're very open with your community. What's happening? Why is it happening? What's going on? And you must love what you do. If you hate your community, if you don't like your product anymore, and that's how a lot of products are actually dying, open source products, that maintainers are just tired. Okay, I'm tired of developing it. Like what happened with Nginx, right? Nginx Ingress. You heard about it, that like there were a couple of developers who just got tired. Okay, we're done. We don't want to develop this thing anymore. We were doing it for last 10, 15 years. Sorry, guys. Bye-bye. All right.
It's one thing we've all learned is that there's real life that happens in the background of our calls. I've had my daughter photobomb several calls along the way, but we actually are right around time, and we lost Sergey's internet here as well. So this is actually perfect time to wrap the show up. Sergey, thank you for coming on. This has been a really interesting conversation. I do love that we got to dive into both in native cloud native data services and AI, but then also into Legos and an open source community, because those are a couple of my favorite topics. So with that, we'll wrap the show up. Thank you everyone for coming, and we will see you next episode. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, team. Bye.
All right.